So we recently had Congressman Matt Gaetz on the show to discuss the latest on COVID-19, the Omicron variant, and vaccine mandates. And as always, some leftist hack reporters lost their minds and did some write-ups, taking him out of context, writing lazy and completely one-sided stories. Now here's the title of the story written by Business Insider's Bill Bostock. It says medics slam Rep. Matt Gaetz for saying COVID-19 is the best way to protect against getting COVID-19. And over at Vanity Fair, they got a little more creative with their headline. This one reads, Republican Idiot Brigade debuts dumbest COVID claims yet. So what exactly was said on the show? Well, here's a flashback.
Well, still the best vaccine we've found is Mother Nature's vaccine. It's contracting the virus. That is what has provided the greatest protection, the most durable protection over the longest period of time.
And the congressman took to Twitter, posting this after one of the journalists reached out to him via email. And here's what Gaetz wrote. He said, quote, natural infection immunity remains the strongest immunity from COVID on Earth. Natural immunity deniers are either Big Pharma, corrupted by Big Pharma, or funded by the advertisements of Big Pharma. Maybe you should just change the name of your website to Pharma Insider. And the congressman joins me now, representing Florida's 1st Congressional District, Congressman Matt Gaetz. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me. So, Congressman, I have to laugh because, I mean, they get it so wrong. They love to take us out of context and post a short clip, and then they interview all the one-sided health officials that agree with them to try to make their point. And it's so ridiculous.
Well, viewers who watch your show live are able to see the future because you're able to see the things that all of the mainstream media has to get triggered by and all spun up over. Here's the reality, Steph. You and I have had many conversations where we are not anti-vaccine or the people who choose to take vaccines. I've said on this show, my parents are fully vaccinated. But increasingly, being fully vaccinated is like being forever vaccinated with different booster sets and even recent statements from Dr. Fauci. But as it comes to the media's reaction to our discussion, they seem to be just doing the bidding of the pharmaceutical industry that wants to continue to peddle the notion that vaccines are somehow stronger than natural immunity. Overwhelmingly, the evidence shows that natural infection immunity is more durable, longer lasting, and better for people than vaccinations. Now, that doesn't mean that people ought to contract COVID, of course, but it means that we ought to have policy choices that are reflective of the strength of natural infection immunity. For example, in the military, our service members who have gotten natural infection immunity should not be forced to take the vaccine because they already have within their body Mother Nature's vaccine. So again, we're not against the vax. We're not against people who take the vax. We would like policy choices to actually reflect the science that shows the strength of natural infection immunity. So I hope over at Business Insider and Vanity Fair, they like cashing those big checks that they get for advertising from Big Pharma. But we're going to keep telling the truth here on your show.
Yeah, and you know, of course, they don't mention that both of us are not anti-vaxxers, and we've said it many times. We're just for medical freedom. We're not the ones to tell people what to do, what's best for them. That is a conversation to be had between a doctor and a patient, not all of these talking heads in the mainstream media. That being said, I mean, think about what happened to us, and we saw that just recently and how they treated the YouTuber, podcaster Joe Rogan. They kept saying that he was taking horse dewormer when he had come down with COVID-19, and he had been given some prescriptions, including ivermectin. They kept calling ivermectin horse dewormer when it's not horse dewormer.
It's quite a state of affairs in the country when Joe Rogan is probably trusted by a great deal more Americans on coronavirus than Dr. Fauci or some of these bureaucrats who seem to oscillate their positions with great frequency. The only reason that natural infection immunity is not central to our policy response to defeat this virus is that no special interest has found out a way to make money off of it yet. If Big Pharma knew how to make money off of natural infection immunity, it would be central to the decisions that we make in and around this virus. So you follow the money, you follow the typical corrosive and corrupt practices of Washington, and the American people see through it, which is why I think people like Joe Rogan are observed and listened to on these questions that in the past we typically would have just surrendered to the medical industrial complex.
Yeah. I want to play for you a clip. It's of Dr. Fauci. He's on MSNBC, and he's talking about how he would prefer for people to voluntarily get the vaccine. And then he was talking about how sometimes we might have to do things that are unpopular. So let's take a look, and then we'll dissect it after. Roll tape.
We really have to get people vaccinated. I mean, I understand, and we all understand, how people do not like to be told what to do. They want to make their own choice and their own free will. I get that, and I respect that. But these are unusual times, and you can't think only of yourself and your own personal opinion, but you've got to think about your communal responsibility to get yourself and your family, and indirectly then the community, protected. So I would prefer, and we all would prefer, that people would be voluntarily getting vaccinated. But if they're not going to do that, sometimes you've got to do things that are unpopular, but that clearly supersede individual choices and are directed predominantly at the communal good. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about requirements.
So how do you interpret that? Because I interpreted that, again, it's another warning that they're going to continue to push these vaccine mandates on the American people, and it's clearly government overreach and unconstitutional.
I had not seen that clip before, and it sent a chill up my spine. You know, surrendering individual will for the communal good. I'm for free will except in unusual times. This is the talk of fascists. I'm deeply troubled by those statements, and I think we actually ought to embrace individual choice and free will to a far greater extent in our country, not to a lesser extent. Remember, these were the same people that told us it was going to be, 14 days to slow the spread. And now here we are increasingly empowering these unelected people to fundamentally change American life. I mean, did we ever think we would live in a day where the CDC was empowered to set rent policy, or where OSHA could drive people out of the workforce and out of their jobs? OSHA was intended to protect people in the workplace, not to drive them out of the workplace. And increasingly, we're seeing that vaccine mandates are shaping the face of our military, shaping the face of administrative agencies of government. And if all you get are a bunch of lemmings who are eager to surrender their free will and individual choice for the common good as defined by Anthony Fauci, that's a dark path for America, and I would suggest we choose a different one.
And then you highlighted here the moving of the goalpost, if you will, from 14 days to now 2 years. And then also from Dr. Fauci, he says it's a matter of when, not if, the definition of fully vaccinated will change. So the problem is it just never ends. So all these people who went and got their vaccines, now they're being told, oh, well, actually, that doesn't really qualify. We're going to need you to keep doing booster after booster after booster. When does this end?
Well, let's also remember to go back to the data on our original point. Even people who get a booster every time Dr. Fauci wants you to have a booster don't have protection from this virus that is stronger than natural infection immunity. The science will back me up on that. Congressman Thomas Massie has been putting out a lot of literature and reviewing a lot of data on that question as well. But yes, the definition of fully vaccinated is now converting to forever vaccinated. And I think that in some ways, we have to be able to ask tough questions about the benefit that inures to big pharma when we adopt this paradigm that, there's no last shot. There's no last vaccine. There's no last booster. And that is something that I think ought to be subjected to fair and rigorous criticism.
Yeah. And then you look at the numbers here when it comes to COVID deaths. More COVID deaths in 2021 under Biden with the vaccines out versus 2020. And then if you look at the numbers in Florida and Texas and some of the other states that are offering medical freedom, that is, you have the choice to decide what's best for your health. These states are doing relatively well when it comes to the rates of COVID-19 and the deaths and how that's affecting the state.
And people always want to paint Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, as somehow anti-vaccine. But as a Floridian, I know that my governor prioritized seniors and the vulnerable. We were very pro-vaccine. We are pro-vaccine for anyone who wants one, for anyone who needs one. We are against using the police power of government to try to drive choices in individual families, especially when there are other alternatives to the vaccine and people have had different health experiences with COVID leading up to this point that change whether or not the vaccine is particularly helpful or poses a greater risk. That's not something that should be decided with a broad brushstroke. These have to be individual cases that are reviewed by physicians and discussed with patients based on their religion, their health background, and the like. It's the Dr. Fauci approach. It's the Joe Biden approach. It's the approach we see from folks like Governor Phil Murphy in New Jersey that seems to want to paint everybody with sort of the same mandate structure and the same paradigm, and that denies us the ability to express that individual will and those free choices.
Yeah, and you think that some of these blue state leaders would be taking notes on what's going on in Florida and Texas and so on, yet they're completely ignoring the statistics, the data, and the science, and then they're like double and tripling down. You look at what happened in New York City, where Bill de Blasio, on his way out, he comes out with new mandates targeting the private sector, and then now 5-year-olds, if your parents want to take you to get a Happy Meal, you're going to have to show your vaccine card. I mean, it's just complete and total government overreach. So I hope that people will wake up and push back, and some people are, that's for sure. Well, Congressman, we appreciate you joining us on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and maybe we'll find some of those blue state governors enjoying Christmas down in free Florida. I know Phil Murphy had to escape New Jersey for Thanksgiving, so we may see more of those folks seeking freedom in the Sunshine State.
Oh, I'm sure there will be a lot of them in Florida, or we'll see a lot of them maskless and breaking all the rules that they push for, because they always do that. They're so hypocritical. Well, Matt, we're going to leave it here.
So predictable.
Totally predictable.
Thanks, Steph.
Thank you.